That is beautiful, Ole. We can hear the birds chirping there in Spain.
I know, it came right on cue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, I woke up this morning, and let's also welcome Cody to the program this morning. How are you, Cody? How's everything in Colorado?
Doing pretty good. They've been massively chemtrail spraying every day. So, other than that, it's pretty good.
Well, I want to come back to that and talk about that in a moment. But the thing I wanted to bring to both of your attention today, because this feeds into something we've spoken about quite a lot, I've noticed a real uptick in reporting about Sweden, which, Ole, you've lived there for a significant portion of your life, born in Denmark, living now in Spain. But you've got some great insights into Sweden. You've brought some prominent Swedish guests onto the show, and we've spoken quite a lot on Light on Conspiracies about Sweden's approach to the coronavirus, which has been not to lock down the population, but to try to develop what's called herd immunity. Now, we've spoken with Michael, we've spoken with Ale, we've spoken with a few different people in Sweden. What have you heard lately coming out of Sweden, Ole?
I think to be able to understand what's going on in Sweden, you have to understand that Sweden is totally unique in the world, and there's a different agenda going on there. Sweden is, since the Second World War, it's a neutral nation with neutrality. At least that's what they claim. It's not a member of NATO, even though unofficially it has been a member since 1954. And so it's been during the Second World War as well. It was neutral, and it took a part of sort of changing sides from whoever seemed to be winning. So first it was supporting Germany, and it allowed troops to be transported through Sweden up to Norway, into Finland, helping to destroy these countries. And then when the war turned around, then suddenly we're the winners. They turned sides. And they were selling a lot of coal and iron and so on to the Hitler war machine and so on. And then they changed it. So they were also, Swedish bankers were very heavily involved in the so-called Russian Revolution, where we had the Ashberg family and other families very, very heavily investing in what was called the Russian Revolution, which was not a Russian revolution, but was a new world overtake there. And so to understand what is going on in Sweden, I've been talking about this for the last year or so, that there's something very sinister and very different going on in Sweden. That's also why I brought on different Swedish guests, because I've been very worried about what's going on here, because Sweden last year had more than 250 alleged bombings,
right,
which is in a country that is supposed to be the most peaceful nation in the world, according to some people. 250 bombings in 1 year is quite a lot. Yeah. And it's been very odd bombings, because they've been mostly targeting balconies and entrances, or empty shops or warehouses. So whoever is the so-called terrorists have been awful at picking targets that have any kind of meaning. So what I've been focusing on a lot is trying to expose this, and I would say that very, very high percentage that the ones behind these bombings, they're inside jobs, and they go under the code name Operation Rimfrost, which officially is the Swedish police fighting gang wars and so on. But I tell you, what I've been finding out, they're the ones doing it. And it's all based on the old Roman template: problem, reaction, solution. So problem, we have all of these bombings, nobody knows who it is, but in the mainstream media, they've been pointed out that it's terrorists or immigrants, or gang wars. But once you really start looking into it, it doesn't match up at all. So the solution to all of this have been drones, that the police have said, we need to have put up drones in the air over the main cities, which they've done now over Malmö, Gothenburg, Stockholm, I think Norrköping and Uppsala as well. Suddenly you have drones, and then when the drones are up there, suddenly the bombing stopped. So we pointed it out, Mikael Odane and I, a couple of times, saying, isn't it a bit strange, that now suddenly the bombings have just stopped once the drones are up there. The very next day, boom, you had a bombing. And we did that twice, and twice bombings have started again after we pointed it out. But lame bombings, and also I've been following it very closely. I know about 23 alleged bombings, but in the mainstream media, it's 250. So maybe I'm a really lousy researcher, or there was only 23, and they pumped it up in media. So then came Corona. And here we have, once again, a totally different approach from Sweden than the other ones. And I tell you, if there's one thing that the Swede is aware of, it's security. They want both seat belts and sort of like a balloon in front of them when they're driving. I'm overdoing it, but they're very, very security minded. Volvo, the safest car on earth, and right. All of it. So for them to just say, okay, this is the worst pandemic ever in the world, we'll just take it easy and improvise, that doesn't match up at all. At the same time, Sweden is sort of like, has been like a beta test run country, I would say, when it comes to different types of, like, they were the first microchipping passports. Now they're the first microchipping people. It's almost 100% digital currency in Sweden now, which makes it very, very weird to come to a country like that where the banks don't even deal with money anymore.
Wow.
And yeah, it's bizarre. When I go there, I don't know. I'm totally handicapped. I can't get on a bus. I can't pay the train without a beep and a bop and an app and a swish and all of these things, what they're called. Cash, sorry, we don't take them. Even the banks, you have to pay some banks to receive your money. It's absolutely bizarre. And then once again came the coronavirus, and they started dealing with it in a totally different way. And I said from very early on that it was actually Johnny Cash who came with the idea that I'm sure now that they're going to point towards Sweden and say, oh, the Swedish phenomena. Right. And here, isn't it amazing? Sweden, so relaxed. They're out walking about, being in the coffee shops and restaurants, and still the number of victims are very low compared to other countries. So what is the only thing that differs? It's the cash money. So I've been pointing out, they're going to point towards the cash, saying it's because of the cash that is what is spreading this virus. So in comes cashless, the whole paradigm that the New World Order has been trying to push with the cashless society. But now it seems like there's even another level that they're taking it to, because after I said these things, a few weeks later, there were different English, BBC was in Stockholm, and American channels have been suddenly focusing on Sweden, saying the Swedish phenomena, the Stockholm syndrome, well, here we have this Swedish company that Codey sometimes refers to, so it's like, so what's going on? And now suddenly the New York Times that went out with a big article today saying,
well, that's what I wanted to show you, is that I think you're right. And I want to get Codey's take on this as well, because I just began noticing a number of videos in my YouTube feed related to Sweden. And I know that 2 weeks ago, an American doctor of Norwegian descent, Daniel Eriksson, gave a press release where he made a point of saying that Sweden and Norway are two good examples for us to compare because they're geographically similar, they're genetically similar, their population density is somewhat similar, and they've taken two opposite approaches. Norway has locked their country down and Sweden has not. And 2 weeks ago, Dr. Eriksson was reporting favorable numbers. He said there was no statistically significant difference between the outbreaks in the two countries, and that this was evidence that this natural herd immunity was a viable medical approach. Now we're seeing a lot of articles. If I just Google Sweden herd immunity and look at the news returns, we've got could herd immunity curb coronavirus. So far in Sweden, that doesn't appear to be the case. We've got Sweden herd immunity plan. Is it working? Sweden's strategy has caused an amplification of the epidemic. In France, one day ago, reporting that. Business Insider, which is frequently reporting fake news, says Sweden shows why herd immunity for coronavirus won't work. Cody, what do you think about this?
Well, I think I've thought for a long time that this whole thing was a bioweapon, of course, and that they're data mining. I think the New World Order people, the Rockefeller Foundations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and all the rest of them tied in with the banking cartels, they've all been watching this and data mining this whole thing. And what's going on in Sweden is definitely part or a cog in the bigger gear system of what they're going to do. And I think there's a lot of disinformation being spread around. And so they excuse me, they're hitting my phone again. I'm getting triple echoes of everything I say, so it's difficult to focus. But anyway, I just think they're data mining, and they put stories out. They watch where they go. They watch how people react, and they can model future psyops according to what, how well does the herd immunity thing take? Will it work in Sweden versus, say, Argentina? They're looking at all the biometrics, all the psychological aspects of this whole thing. And so a lot of this stuff is they do one thing in Norway and another thing in Sweden, and then they watch and they see. Because I don't think they really care who gets infected or what's the best way to fight this thing. They care about the info and how people react to it.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in that. Yes, Ole.
No, I just want to add as well, because, in many other countries where I have sources, and also I've been speaking to people, very, very few people know people that actually had corona. Do you know what is labeled corona? It's like very, very few. But they read about them, they hear about it in mainstream media, but you don't see it. There are no funerals, there's no, all of these things, it doesn't match up at all. But in Sweden, it's different, because from Sweden, I have on a personal level where I've been informed by several people that have say that they've had corona and that it was a horrible, horrible flu for about 10 days, really awful. They felt worse than ever. And I have a friend of ours she's working as a nurse, and two of her colleagues that were only like in their early 30s died from it. So it's like, is something else going on there as well? Have they actually let out the virus there to make a point? Is that part of it, that where in some other nations the fear thing has been enough? Because the thing is also, you have to understand, I believe, that if you let out a virus and you let it free, then the chances of it destroying this hidden network that the power structure has of a lot of people totally compartmentalized, of people that only know their part, if they start getting infected as well, you will destroy their networks. So I think they're very fearful of something like that happening. So therefore they need to control the outcome. And maybe they use, once again, Sweden as a beta test lab. And maybe they have let out the virus there. So you have actual people getting sick from it in Sweden, but not in other nations. Or maybe there's other nations as well where they actually let it out. But
I think there is a contagion that's out there, Ole. I mean, a lot of people have made this sweeping statement that the thing is a hoax. I don't think that's what's going on. I think what we're dealing with is a very sophisticated bio-warfare attack that's blended with a cyber warfare attack and a psychological attack. We're going to talk about this in detail when we begin our sponsor exclusive segment in just about 15 minutes on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies. patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. One of the things I'd like to ask you guys to focus on is this. I noticed yesterday that in my YouTube feed, I started getting a lot of videos about what's really going on in Sweden. And I'll be accused of being sexist for saying that Lana Blakely is a very attractive woman, but this is my opinion, and I think many people would agree. I'm saying that only because I think it's pretty well known that attractive women get a lot of attention online. And when we click on this woman's video, it's unremarkable in that it's just a person sitting in front of a camera talking. She's not visiting exotic locations. She's not building a quad rotor RX-7 with 1,000 horsepower turbocharger or inventing something new. There are certain videos I see that have unique aspects to them. This one's unremarkable in that it is merely an attractive woman speaking to the camera. She, Ole, I'd like you to listen to her for a second because she doesn't sound Swedish to me, but I don't know.
She doesn't look Swedish either.
Let's see if we can hear her here. How do I get her sound going?
I think you're going to be called sexist.
To the healthcare, and also since the situation is constantly changing and being monitored.
But is she from Sweden? Can you tell by her voice?
Is how the situation is today. Tomorrow might look different.
Can you tell by her voice if she's from Sweden?
No.
Well, anyway, she does give us some nice views of Sweden, and she talks about how the country has not been locked down. I'll tell you the truth, it doesn't look substantially different than New York City in terms of the density of people walking around, so I don't know how accurate of a control this is, but Lana Blakely has a lot of subscribers to her channel, so for this video to get 189,000 views doesn't surprise me. Her videos look similar to me upon first glance in that they all basically feature a picture of her. And again, I just mention this because it's not showing us 50 different pictures of exotic locations. I also yesterday received this video, which features both an attractive female and an attractive male. This is a channel I was not previously familiar with.
But Jason, the guy is American. This guy is
That's
American.
what I mean. He's American, she's Swedish. And so they have this channel which, details their adventures in Sweden. It's only got 38,000 subscribers, but yet this video has received over 500,000 views, which is very interesting. I've become pretty... Yeah.
Do you know the thing? I don't want to point at these channels at all. What I do...
but let me finish the idea, Ole, really quickly, please, because it is important. I'm not pointing at these channels other than to say we've got people who are young, who are attractive, who are going to attract people's attention. And the thing that both of these videos said is that, Swedish people trust the government and the government trusts us, which I felt was directing people down a road that is not entirely true.
Yeah, and that was exactly the sentence I wanted to point out. Because it sounds really good, and then suddenly they say these exact words that you said, and I was like, whoa, hang on. This is not really the truth in Sweden, because there's a lot. They also say this is a country of no corruption or something like that. That is
and
so
I was
not
flabbergasted by that.
No, that is the picture that they're pumping out there.
Correct.
To market Sweden. And this is why I put a major question mark around that. Either they're really naive, or they haven't looked into anything, because that is what I believed in 1985 before the hit on the Swedish Prime Minister. I thought that was the country I lived in, no corruption, no crimes hardly, no nothing. And then, oh my God, it's a can of worm. It's really corrupt, I tell you. But you don't see it so obvious. It's anyway. So
there's a third possibility that you didn't mention. The third possibility is that these individuals, whether they know it or not, have been manipulated into being part of a social engineering operation to cause people to believe these things. And we're just about out of time here, but we're going to get in depth on this conversation. I'm very interested in hearing Codey's input about the scale of this type of psychological operation. So we'll be back in just 10 minutes, and people can join us on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Good news, the technical difficulties we were having over the weekend with Patreon have been resolved, and I've actually put up a director's cut of yesterday's Sunday with Charles for Patreon sponsors to enjoy. Ole, Cody will be back in just a few moments, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching.